or vocabulary worksheet and handed that in. That's your first priority. That needs to be completely done and handed in before you watch this video. Once you're done with that, you can watch the video. We're just going to do kind of a quick review of what we did yesterday, where we copied down all of the literary terms. Okay, we had tragic hero, and we have two of those tragic heroes. We have Romeo Montague and Juliet Capulet. You have to remember that Romeo is a Montague and Juliet is a Capulet. And remember, the easiest way to remember that is that Juliet and Capulet rhyme. Okay, so make sure you keep those straight. They're there. We have tragic flaws. So our two tragic heroes, they have tragic flaws. They're too quick to fall in love. They're too brash. They make very quick decisions, and they don't really have a lot of common sense. But keep in mind, it's also because they're pretty young, right? Juliet's 13. We assume Romeo's somewhere around 18 or 19. Okay, so just a quick review of those. The antagonist is the adversary or hostile force opposing the protagonist. It can be a character or a group of characters, and we're going to see some of those pretty quickly here. A foil is a character whose personality and attitude contrast sharply with those of another character, and we'll see an example of those as well. A soliloquy is a speech given by a character alone. They're basically talking to themselves. They're alone on stage. And then an aside, they're still talking to themselves. However, there are other characters on stage, but those other characters cannot hear what the aside is talking about. So keep that in mind. Dramatic irony is when we know more than the characters. Comic relief is when we, add a joke here and there to lighten the tension a little bit. Okay, so those were just some of the elements of a Shakespeare play that we went over. So we're actually going to go ahead and start reading today, and you will need your textbooks. You're also going to need your summary sheets, and you're going to need your character sheets. Open up your textbooks to page 1. Hold on. 177. Right there on 177, those are just a review of what we talked about. Also, if you didn't get those notes from yesterday, I'm going to put that keynote is on Canvas, so you can go ahead and copy those down when you have a minute. Okay, so we're going to start off by reading the background. We're going to read a little bit about William Shakespeare, even though we know a little bit about him already. William Shakespeare, follow along with me, has long been considered the greatest writer in the English language, and perhaps the greatest playwright of all time. 400 years after their premiere performances, his plays remain more popular than ever, and they have been produced more often and in more countries than those of any other author. Also, remember like the modern versions like Romeo and Juliet and She's the Man and 10 Things I Hate About You. Those are all modern movies that are based off of Shakespeare plays, okay? However, despite Shakespeare's renown, we have relatively few details about his life and career as an actor, poet, and playwright. Shakespeare came from Stratford-upon-Avon, a small village about 90 miles northwest of London, and was probably born in 1564. Though no records exist, we assume that he attended the local grammar school. In 1582, he married Anne Hathaway, the daughter of a farmer. The couple's first child arrived in 1583, and twins, a boy and a girl, followed 2 years later. We know nothing about the next 7 years of Shakespeare's life, but he likely left his family behind and joined a traveling theater troupe. His trail resurfaces in London, where he had become a successful poet and playwright. He wrote for and acted with the Lord Chamberlain's Men, a popular theater troupe, and by 1597, the year that the tragedy of Romeo and Juliet was published, he had become a shareholder of the theater company, so he owned part of it. As his popularity grew, Shakespeare also became part owner of London's Globe Theatre. In 1603, King James I became a patron of the Globe Theatre, and the theater troupe became known as the King's Men. In 1609, Shakespeare published his sonnets, a series of poems that received wide popular acclaim. Shakespeare then began to take advantage of his wealth and fame, spending more time in Stratford-upon-Avon and retiring there permanently around 1612. He would write no more plays after that year. No records confirm the cause or date of his death. A monument marking his gravesite indicates that he passed away on April 23, 1616. Although we have little data documenting his life, more pages have been written about Shakespeare than about any author in the history of Western civilization. There he is. Cool dude. Chill. Okay. Now, we already know that this is set in Verona, in Italy. And we have a special guest appearance by Mantua, which is a neighboring town. Mantua, Verona. The time is the 14th century. This is the cast, and you have to make sure you keep these straight, because since there are two sides, we have to understand which person is on which side of the feud, okay? So first we have the Montagues. Sorry this looks so weird on mine, but it's in your book, so you should be able to see this easily. We have the Montagues. We have Lord Montague and Lady Montague, so they're like the heads of the family. And then we have Romeo. Romeo is their son. Benvolio is the nephew of Montague and a friend of Romeo, Romeo's cousin. Now, something you need to know about Benvolio is that he hates fighting. So when they get into these sword fights and these brawls on the streets, he does not want any part of it. He loves to be, the devil's advocate. He kind of tries to break up the fights. He's very peaceful, okay? So he does not like to fight. Now we have Balthazar and we have Abraham also is what people say, but they are servants to the Montagues. Balthazar is specifically a servant to Romeo, okay? So that's one side. We have the Montagues on one side. On the other side of the feud, we have the Capulets. We have Lord and Lady Capulet, and then we have Juliet. Juliet's the daughter. Romeo and Juliet fall in love. And I think we have that established. Then we have Tybalt. Tybalt is the nephew of Lady Capulet, so Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. And Tybalt is the complete opposite of Benvolio. Tybalt loves violence. He draws his sword whenever he can. He's got a very short temper. So Benvolio and Tybalt are what we call foils because their characters are opposite. They contradict one another. Okay? So we have the peaceful guy on the Montague side. We have the guy who likes to fight on the Capulet side. Now the nurse is Juliet's kind of like her nanny. She's been raising Juliet ever since she was a baby. They have a very close relationship, much closer than Juliet and her mother. Peter is a servant to Juliet's nurse, and then we have Samson and Gregory, and then we have an old man, and the old man he comes in later. But Samson and Gregory are going to show up right at the beginning. Now our other characters, Prince Aeschylus, he's the ruler of Verona. He's kind of like the mayor, kind of like it's just the town of Verona. It's not all of Italy, so just keep that in mind. He's more like a mayor than like a king or like a president or something. We have Mercutio, who is Romeo's best friend, and Mercutio is a giant goofball. He's just like, he likes to make jokes. He's not very serious about things, and he and Romeo are pals. Then we have Friar Lawrence, who's a Franciscan priest. And we have Friar John, who's another Franciscan priest. Friar Lawrence is the main one. He likes to deal with like herbs and potions and medicines and stuff like that. And he is actually the one that's responsible for marrying Romeo and Juliet. Next on the list, we have Count Paris, who is a young nobleman, kinsman of the prince, and he is actually going after Juliet. Okay? Oh, make sure you're filling out your character sheet. I should have said that at the beginning. Yikes. Then we have the apothecary, and he's going to play a special role toward the end. We have a page to Paris, chief watchman, 3 musicians, an officer, the chorus, and citizens of Verona. And those are just like extras. All right? So we have our characters. And now we're going to go ahead and start reading. We already have gone over the prologue. We broke it down. We understand what it means. If you forget, you have that paper with you. Okay, so we're done with the prologue. We're going to start with Act 1, Scene 1. Make sure that you have your summary sheets out and ready to go. We're not going to write anything in them until after we're done reading Scene 1. Okay? Okay. I'm trying to give you time to, shuffle papers around. Whatever. This is weird. Okay, so we have Act 1, Scene 1, a public square in Verona. Enter Samson and Gregory. Now, which side are Samson and Gregory on? Read the stage directions, read the notes. They're servants of the house of Capulet. So Samson and Gregory are on the Capulet side. They're armed with swords and bucklers or shields, okay, which is never a good sign. So Samson says, Gregory, on my word, will not carry coals. Now, here's the deal about Shakespeare. There is a lot on the side that we need to make sure we're keeping up on because it tells us, it kind of translates the language for us. Because even if we think we know what it means, there are phrases and stuff that are not used anymore. They're antiquated. And so we have to make sure we understand what they're talking about. So when Samson says, will not carry coals, he means we won't stand to be insulted. We're not going to take anybody's crap. Okay, so then Gregory says, No, for then we should be colliers, and colliers are those involved in dirty work of hauling coal, who are often the butt of jokes. There are a lot of punny jokes. There's a lot of puns. So we're going to talk about coal, we're going to talk about collar, we're going to talk about all of this stuff. So they're making all these jokes at the beginning. Samson says, I mean, and we being collar will draw. So he's like, collar is anger. If we get angry, then we'll draw. Gregory says, I, while you live, draw your neck out of collar. Collar is a hangman's noose. Samson, I strike quickly, being moved. Gregory, but thou art not quickly moved to strike. Samson, a dog of that house of Montague moves me. Gregory, to move is to stir, and to be valiant is to stand. Therefore, if thou art moved, thou runnest away. Samson, a dog of that house shall move me to stand. I will take the wall of any man or maid of Montague's. Gregory, that shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall. Okay, take the wall. Walk. So people of higher rank have the privilege of walking closer to the wall to avoid getting water or garbage that's on their clothes and stuff like that. Okay, so right now they're basically just talking about like Samson's like, ooh, I'm tough. I can take people on. I got this. And Gregory's like, no, because you would just walk away. Like, you wouldn't. He's like, no, Montague would make me want to fight. And he's like, okay, whatever. So they're just kind of talking back and forth as they're walking down the street. So the next page says, Samson says, 'tis true, and therefore women, so women walking against the wall, being the weaker vessels, are ever thrust to the wall. Therefore push I will Montague's men from the wall and thrust his maids to the wall. So he's talking tough, and he's talking about overpowering women and pushing the men away. He's kind of a chauvinist. Vocab word. Gregory says, the quarrel is between our masters and us their men. Samson, 'tis all one. I will show myself a tyrant. When I have fought with men, I will be cruel with the maids. I will cut off their heads. Gregory, the heads of the maids? Samson, aye, the heads of the maids, or their maiden heads. Take it in what sense thou wilt. Gregory, they must take it in sense that feel it. Samson, me they shall feel, while I am able to stand. And 'tis known, I am a pretty piece of flesh. Samson is a big talker. He's talking himself up pretty good. Gregory, 'tis well thou art not fish. If thou hadst been poor John. Draw thy tool, here comes two of the house of Montagues. So a poor John is a salted fish considered fit only for poor people to eat, so that he's just like, you're not as tough as you think you are. And then all of a sudden he's like, draw your sword, because here come two people from the house of the Montagues. So that's when Abram and Balthazar walk in, and they're on the Montague side. So we have Samson and Gregory on Capulet's side, and we have Abraham and Balthazar on Montague's side. So Samson says, my naked weapon is out. Quarrel, I will back thee. Gregory, how? Turn thy back and run? So he's like, you're going to run away. Samson says, fear me not. Gregory, no, Mary, I fear thee. Mary is a short form of by the Virgin Mary, and so a mild exclamation. Samson, let us take the law of our sides, let them begin. Gregory, I will frown as I pass by, and let them take it as they list. Samson, nay, as they dare, I will bite my thumb at them, which is disgrace to them if they bear it. Abram, do you bite your thumb at us, sir? Samson, I do bite my thumb, sir. Abram, do you bite your thumb at us, sir? So Samson says this to Gregory. Is it the law of our side if I say I? Gregory, no. So right there, what they're talking about is like, if I say I'm biting my thumb at them, does that mean I'm starting the fight so they can legally hit back? So they're trying to get each other to swing first, basically, is what's happening. Because if they swing first, then the people who start the fight, those are the ones that get in trouble. So they're each trying to provoke the other to draw their weapon and to fight first. Okay? So Samson says, no, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir, but I bite my thumb, sir. So again, he's like, I'm not necessarily biting my thumb at you, but I'm biting my thumb. So if you're offended by it, why don't you do something about it? Gregory, do you quarrel, sir? Abram, quarrel, sir? No, sir. Samson, but if you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you. So he'll fight for his master. Abram, no better. Samson, well, sir. Enter Benvolio, the nephew of Montague and Romeo's cousin. So remember about Benvolio is that he does not like fighting. So then Gregory, aside to Samson, says, Say better. Here comes one of my master's kinsmen. Samson. Yes, better, sir. Abram. You lie. Samson. Draw if you be men. Gregory, remember thy swashing blow. And then they fight. Sword fight. Cling, cling, cling. Ching, ching, ching. Benvolio. Part, fools! Beats down their swords. Put up your swords. You know not what you do. So Benvolio's like, knock it off. Enter Tybalt, the hot-headed nephew of Lady Capulet and first cousin of Juliet. Tybalt and Benvolio are foils, they're complete opposites. Tybalt says, What, art thou drawn amongst these heartless hinds? Turn thee, Benvolio, look upon thy death. So he's like, fight me, Benvolio. I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me. Tybalt, what? Drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word, as I hate hell, all Montagues, and thee. Have at thee, coward, and then they fight. Ching, 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 clank, clank, ching, ching. Enter several of both houses who join in the fray. So it literally turns into this giant brawl in the middle of the street. There are citizens and peace officers, there are random people jumping in, and they're all beating up on each other. And so then an officer comes in. He's like, clubs, bills, and partisans, strike, beat them down. Citizens, down with the Capulets, down with the Montagues. And then old lady Capulet and Lord Capulet come in. And they're like, what noise is this? Give me my long sword, ho! That just means, give me my long sword, please. And so Lady Capulet says, a crutch, a crutch. Why call you for a sword? Capulet, my sword, I say. Old Montague has come and flourishes his blade in spite of me. So then old guy Capulet's coming in, and he's like, well, if Montague's going to fight, then I'm going to fight too. So then Montague and Lady Montague come in. Montague, thou villain Capulet, hold me not, let me go. So Lady Montague's like, holding her back. Lady Montague, thou shalt not stir 1 foot to seek a foe. Enter Prince Escalus with his attendants. At first, no one hears him. Now, Prince Escalus is the ruler of Verona. So if he comes in, is that a good thing? No, because they're going to get in trouble. So he's going to whoop some rear end. So he's mad. Okay, so the prince says, rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighbor-stained steel. Will they not hear? What ho, you men, you beasts! So they don't hear him at first. That quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins. On pain of torture from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground and hear the sentence of your moved prince. So he's like, put your weapons down and listen. 3 civil brawls, bred of an airy word by thee, old Capulet and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets. So how many brawls have there been? 3. There's been 3 brawls so far, and he's tired of it. So have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming ornaments to wield old partisans in hands as old, cankered with peace, to part your cankered hate. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. So, if they do this again, what's going to happen? They are going to get executed. Their lives are going to pay the price. For this time, all the rest depart away. So leave, get out, go home. You, Capulet, shall go along with me, and Montague, come you this afternoon, to know our farther pleasure in this case, to old Freetown, our common judgment place. Once more, on pain of death, all men depart. Okay, so this whole thing, this whole big deal by the prince, he's basically chewing everybody out. He says that there have been 3 brawls in the streets from an airy word, which means that literally just because of insults, like they just can't keep their mouths shut, and then it turns into this huge deal. So he warns everyone that if any more fights happen, they're all going to be put to death because he's tired of it. So he's going to chew Capulet's rear end now, and then later he'll talk to Montague. Okay, so then the prince leaves. Okay, so when it says exeunt all but Montague, Lady Montague, and Benvolio, so everybody leaves except for Lord Montague, Lady Montague, and Benvolio. And Montague says, who set this ancient quarrel new abroach? Speak, nephew. Were you by it when it began? So who started the fight? Benvolio says, here were the servants of your adversary, and yours close fighting ere I did approach. I drew to part them. In the instant came the fiery Tybalt with his sword prepared. So he says, 2 servants from each side started the fight, and I came to break them up. And then when Tybalt came in, it all went downhill from there. line 103, which, as he breathed defiance to my ears, he swung about his head and cut the winds, who nothing hurt withal hissed him in scorn. While we were watching interchanging thrusts and blows, came more, and fought on part and part, till the prince came, who parted either part. So it just kind of escalated from there. Lady Montague says, "Oh, where is Romeo? Saw you him today? Right glad I am that he was not at this fray." So she's like, "Where's Romeo? Why wasn't he at the fight?" I mean, she's glad he wasn't at the fight, but she hasn't seen him all day. Benvolio says, "Madam, an hour before the worshipped sun peered forth the golden window of the east, a troubled mind drave me to walk abroad, where underneath the grove of sycamore that westward rooteth from the city's side, so early walking did I see your son." So Benvolio says, "Well, I saw him really early walking this morning." We're going to see what's bothering poor little Romeo. "Towards him I made, but he was ware of me, and stole into the covert of the wood. I, measuring his affections by my own, which then most sought there most might not be found, being one too many of my weary self, pursued my humor, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned who gladly fled from me." Okay, so Romeo saw that Benvolio was coming toward him, and Romeo ran off and hid in the woods. Benvolio himself was seeking solitude, so he wanted to be by himself, so he didn't go after him. Okay, he just saw that he was running away. Montague says, "Many a morning hath he there been seen, with tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs. But all so soon as the all-cheering sun should in the farthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed, away from light steals home my heavy son, and private in his chamber pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. Black and portentous must this humor prove, unless good counsel may the cause remove." So Romeo has been seen wandering through the woods at night crying. He's, adding to the morning dew. His sighs add to the clouds. He's very sad, very dramatically sad. At dawn, he'll go back home, but he'll go to his room and lock himself in and shut all the lights off. Okay, blow all the candles out and close all the curtains and create a night for himself. So Montague is a little worried about Romeo. Benvolio says, my noble uncle, do you know the cause? Do you know why he's so sad?" Montague, "I neither know it, nor can learn it of him." Benvolio, "Have you importuned him by any means? Have you asked him?" Montague, "Both by myself and many other friends, but he his own affections' counselor is to himself. I will not say how true, but to himself so secret and so close, so far from sounding and discovery, as is the bud bit with an envious worm, ere he can spread his sweet leaves to the air, or dedicate his beauty to the sun. He's a very private person. Could we but learn from whence his sorrows grow, we would as willingly give cure as know. If we could find out, we would help him." And then Romeo comes in, and he's lost in thought. He's looking around. He doesn't notice that they're there. Benvolio says, "See where he comes. So please you step aside. I'll know his grievance, or be much denied." Montague, "I would thou wert so happy by thy stay to hear true shift. Come, madam, let's away." So Lady Montague and Lord Montague leave, so that Benvolio can try to figure out what's wrong with Romeo. So Benvolio says, "Good morrow, cousin." Romeo, "Is the day so young?" Benvolio, "But new struck 9, so it's 9 o'clock. Oh, there's Romeo. Looks kind of like Zac Efron. Romeo says, "Ay me, sad hours seem long. Was that my father that went hence so fast?" Benvolio says, "It was." What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours? Romeo, "Not having that which having makes them short." Benvolio, "In love?" Romeo, "Out." Benvolio, "Of love?" Romeo, "Out of her favor, where I am in love." So Romeo's in love. Benvolio, "Alas, that love, so gentle in his view, should be so tyrannous and rough in proof." Romeo, "Alas, that love, whose view is muffled still, should without eyes see pathways to his will. Where shall we dine? Oh me, what fray was here?" Whoa, so he's like pining, and then he's like, "Oh, what happened?" "Yet tell me not, for I have heard it all." So when it's talking about love, there's a lot of references to Cupid, the god of love, who's typically pictured as a blind boy with wings and a bow and arrow, and anyone hit falls in love instantly. So Romeo has been hit by one of Cupid's arrows, and then he notices that there had been a fight that had happened. So Romeo, okay, we're still on Romeo. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Why then, O brawling love, O loving hate, O anything, of nothing first create, O heavy lightness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep, that is not what it is. This love I feel, that feel no love in this. Dost thou not laugh? Okay, now this part, Romeo is very confused and he's very upset and he's trying to describe his feelings. And we can tell that he's confused because he uses all of these phrases that just are like completely opposite of each other. He has a lot of oxymorons. Feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, heavy lightness up here. Okay, loving hate. They're contradictory because he doesn't know how he's just struggling with his feelings so much. And so then he says, dost thou not laugh? And then Benvolio says, no, cuz. So he's like, are you laughing at me? Benvolio's like, no, cuz, I rather weep. So Benvolio feels bad for Romeo. And Romeo says, good heart, at what? Benvolio, at thy good heart's oppression. Romeo, why such is love's transgression? Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate, to have it pressed with more of thine. This love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to too much of mine own. Okay, so Romeo replies that this is one more problem caused by love, because Benvolio feels bad for him. He now feels worse than before because he must carry the weight of Benvolio's sympathy along with his grief. So, since Benvolio said he felt bad for Romeo, now Romeo's like, oh, that's just one more thing I have to deal with, that you feel bad for me. So Romeo is very, very emotional, very overly dramatic. So he's having a kind of a rough go. So I'm on line 183, right here. It says, love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs, being purged, a fire sparkling in lover's eyes, being vexed, a sea nourished with lover's tears. What is it else? A madness most discreet, a choking gall, and a preserving sweet. Farewell, my cuz. Benvolio, soft, I will go along, and if you leave me so, you do me wrong. Romeo, tut, I have lost myself, I am not here. This is not Romeo, he's some other where. Benvolio, tell me in sadness, who is it that you love? Romeo, what shall I groan and tell thee? Benvolio, groan, why no, but sadly tell me who. Romeo, bid a sick man in sadness make his will. Ah, word ill urged to one that is so ill. In sadness, cousin, I do love a woman. And Benvolio's like, okay, great. Thanks for that information. Benvolio says, I aimed so near when I suppose you love. So he's like, obviously, I figured you loved a woman, but who is it? Who do you love? Romeo says, a right good marksman, and she's fair, I love. Benvolio, a right fair mark, cuz, is soonest hit. Romeo, well, in that hit you miss. She'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity well armed. So the girl he's in love with isn't interested in falling in love. Diana is the goddess of chastity, which means that she's pure. Okay, so he's so upset because she doesn't love him back because she's not interested in that. So he says, from love's weak childish bow she lives unharmed. She will not stay the siege of loving terms, nor bide the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to saints seducing gold. Oh, she is rich in beauty, only poor, that when she dies, with beauty dies her store. So she's not swayed by Romeo's love. She doesn't care about his wealth. She's wasting her beauty, is what he believes. Benvolio says, then she hath sworn that she will still live chaste? Romeo, she hath, and in that sparing makes huge waste. For beauty starved with her severity cuts beauty off from all posterity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair, to merit bliss by making me despair. She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live to tell it now. So he's depressed, again, because she won't love him back. Benvolio says, be ruled by me, forget to think of her. Romeo, oh, teach me how I should forget to think. So Benvolio's like, forget about her, man. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, you're going to find somebody else. And Romeo's like, I can't forget about her. Benvolio says, by giving liberty unto thine eyes, examine other beauties. So what is Benvolio telling Romeo to do? Look at other girls. Check out some other options. Okay? She's not the only fish in the sea. Romeo says, 'tis the way to call hers exquisite in question more, These happy masks that kiss fair ladies' brows, being black puts us in mind they hide the fair. He that is struck and blind cannot forget the precious treasure of his eyesight lost. Show me a mistress that is passing fair. What doth her beauty serve but as a note where I may read who passed that passing fair? Farewell, thou canst not teach me to forget. So he's saying right there, a woman who is exceedingly beautiful is only going to remind him of who he loves, who is even prettier because she's the most beautiful woman ever. Okay, so even if he would go look at other girls, their beauty would just remind him of his true love. Very dramatic. Benvolio says, I'll pay that doctrine or else die in debt. So Benvolio's like, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to prove you that you're wrong, that you can forget about her. Otherwise, I'll die trying. And then Benvolio leaves. Okay, so that's the end of scene 1. We're going to go ahead and I'm going to stop. And you need to make sure that in Act 1, Scene 1, in that box, you need to go back, okay, maybe read a couple more passages, read the notes on the side. You need to summarize it for me. You only get that first box, and you must write sentences. So make sure you get all the important parts. Remember, it starts with the fight, okay? Then we learn about Romeo. Then Romeo comes in and talks to Benvolio. But be specific. What are the most vital parts of Act 1, Scene 1?